Hi everyone, it's MA. I'm here to do a check-in wrap-up on the Only 10 Decks for Lent hashtag. First off, I'll say I really enjoyed this. For me, as someone who has some decision paralysis and can succumb easily to distractions and was starting to feel deck overwhelm, this felt more of a relief than a constraint to me. So I really enjoyed it, and I think I will in the future give myself like a time frame and pick a set of decks and let everything else stay in the background for later. That really helped me manage my decks and my attention span. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I realized that as I was talking through the decks, and these being my first videos, I was using the phrase work with a lot. And I'm just going to throw in a few notes as someone who is a tarot learner, studier, and lover. I even have this question for other people sometimes that have a lot of decks. Well, if you're not reading for people, what are you doing with all these decks? So I will give you the rundown. I will say this last 6 to 8 weeks has been a period where I use tarot more than usual, and I'm going to ease up a little bit. But just to give a breakdown, with the Spirit Keepers, I was doing a daily single card study. I wasn't really then referring to the cards for guidance. I was more pulling the card, writing down my own impressions of the symbols and imagery, and then reading through the very intensive book of maps. So that was more of a study than a guidance. I was mostly every day doing a daily draw where I was pushing myself to do 3-card draws rather than singles and practice reading with more cards on the table. Usually I would pull 2 tarot cards and 1 oracle. For most of March, I did not use any guided questions. They were just general readings, and I journaled about those. When I say journal, I'm talking like maybe a third of a notebook page, not that intensive at all. I'm not really a spread person, but these past few months I did spreads for the new moon. I did spread at Ostara. Starting in April, Healing Through Tarot via Instagram had a chakra challenge, which is still ongoing with daily questions. So I have been working through that on a daily basis, again, using 3-card pulls. I did a spread for the full moon, which I frequently skip. And also for that, I used a Celtic cross, which I don't ever use. But thank you to Jenn Storrelli at Mama Squirrel's Witchy Wisdom. She did a video in February really walking through that spread, and it made more sense to me than it ever had, which previously was 0. And I did a lot of practice spreads. Like I would take a deck and I would lay out a Celtic cross like 10 times, until I worked through the whole deck and just practice reading with it. And so since the full moon fell on the Saturday before Easter, I wrapped up the 10 deck challenge with a full moon spread, Celtic cross, where I used 1 deck for each of the positions. So I used all 10 decks, and that was pretty fun. Also, kind of just for fun and just for learning purposes, I will pick up a deck, and sometimes while I'm watching TV or, puttering around, I will just lay out a three cards at a time and cycle through, okay, this next one's general, love, career, spiritual, and for an imaginary querent or for a TV character if I have the TV on. So I call that my fidget study, where I'm only paying half attention. Sometimes I feel that actually gives me better readings because I'm not as focused on it. And Lisa Papez had done one of her recent Reading the Tarot series about a 3-card positional spread. I'll link that as well because I used that as well. So that's what I did. That was a lot of tarot work for me across a couple months. I had one instance where someone asked for a reading. Again, I don't charge or offer readings, but it's an acquaintance, and I read for writers, and this person had a question about a project, so I read for them. So that's what I did with the decks. And here's what I learned about the 10 decks. So I'm just going to go through them in no particular order. So the first one I had in my 10 decks was the Seed and Sickle from Liminal 11. I like this deck. I know much is made of the fact that it's got the 2 guidebooks, and honestly, I'm going to say I didn't really vibe with what the guidebook had to say about the cards, and even though I'm not familiar with all the plants, I ended up just kind of making up my own association for the cards that I pulled. I didn't use this deck a ton, so it's not like I worked through every card. But Crocus, I could look at Crocus and say, okay, it comes up as the first thing that comes up in the spring. It breaks through the hard ground. Similar, foxglove. It can be a medicine. It can be a poison. It's beautiful. So maybe something that's going to deceive you with its attractiveness that's really poisonous, or something you have to decide, something that's neutral that you have to decide how you're going to use it. So that's where I came out with this deck. I love it in terms of the artwork. There are some plants I'm not familiar with, so if I'm going to keep it and use it, I would probably have to look into those as I go. I might go to more of a magical correspondences book than to the guidebooks that came with the deck. But that's that. Honestly, this was one of the least used out of the 10. Then the next one in the pile is Luna Soul. I just wanted to have a standard RWS in the mix. Again, this is one I didn't use that much. In the scope of things, the illustrations are a little flat to me, but I always want to have a straight up RWS around. This is one, if the time comes anytime soon, there we go, where I'm going back into the office. This is the kind of thing I can tuck in my bag, I can have with me, and it's not going to raise any eyebrows. It's kind of muted. It's very functional. Maybe not the most exciting deck in the world, but I love it for what it is. And I did modify it. I cut all the titles off and I etched it in yellow. So that's that one. Next up, Fifth Spirit. This to me is one that just reads really straightforward for me. I love using it. It's, if I pull one card, 3 cards, that's the sweet spot for this one for me. And when I did that giant Celtic cross with each deck, this deck was in the first position, and I didn't intend to place a chosen signifier card, but the card I randomly drew was Queen of Swords, which is sometimes my signifier, not always in a positive way. And in this case, with what I was using the spread for, this ended up being perfect. With the thing that drew my attention in this particular reading is the handout and the butterfly. Someone who knows what needs to be done, is expecting and wanting transformation, but isn't really taking the action to do it. So that's how I read that. And even though there's not a lot of landscape built into these illustrations, I still get a lot out of them. I just wanted to show this strength card, which I really love. I'm not really into lions, only because I don't have lions in my life. I don't live anywhere where there's lions, so I'm always happy to see an animal that's, I'm more likely to encounter in everyday life. So I like that this has a kind of lovingly ferocious dog on it. So anyone, I would call this a workhorse deck for me. Next was Spirit Keepers. As I mentioned, I did this mostly for daily draw and study. I think because of the intensity of the imagery, and it's just information loaded. This deck, I think, will work for me, at least initially going forward. More of a daily pull, a card that really would, I would look to for guidance throughout the day. So that's how I plan to use that. The Poesis Oracle. Very straightforward as an oracle. It combined well with any deck that I paired it to. Just single card, very straightforward, no guidebook needed. And can I just enjoy this delightful licking the rainbow joy card for one moment? So that's that for that one. Herb Crafter is a deck I bought and put away because, as I mentioned in the first video, I thought I needed to use it to learn about all the plants, and I kind of shut myself down from making full use of it. But as I used it more in the spreads and pulling 3 cards at a time, I realized, first of all, these images are very inviting. there's no people in them. There's a scene that's set. They seem to ask the reader to step in as a participant, and there are, there is information and images that can be focused on for reading beyond knowing the actual meaning of the plant. So I was very happy to work with this. I think this is going to be, not quite a comfort deck or a hug deck, but there's something about this that really put me at ease and was very inviting, while at the same time the readings were pretty direct and weren't fuzzy or holding back or being too kind to me, but I felt very welcomed into each scene. So very happy that I kept this and then opened it up again, a year and a half later, where I had a much better understanding of bringing in a card meaning with me to apply to the images. So very happy with that one. There were no losers here. There were no losers. Abstract Futures. This deck is kind of intense. The most abstract thing I have. It is its own type of challenge for me. How I ended up using it was either paired with other cards. This is one where if I pull one card, I'm not at a point where I can really pull much from it. But when I stretch several cards together in a spread, there's play and motion between the colors and shapes. I usually do a reading at the new moon. Frequently, I use the Tarot of the Crone for that, and I found that this deck also worked well for that. It reads well in the dark or by candlelight, so that was why I first chose it. But knowing, and I will put the link into the creator's Instagram, this is a deck that was created with a lot of intention and a lot of magic, and they use it in that manner. And I feel like I have to be in a certain state of mind to access it. And that's something that I'm not on a daily basis tapping into. But when I'm ready and when it's time for me to go for it, I'm really pleased with what I will use that deck for, even though it may be a little bit limited. Next was the Sasabrito, the Tiny Traveler, I think they call it officially. This was one that, first of all, when someone asked me for a reading, I instantly grabbed this without even thinking about it. I had the most confidence that I could pull 3 cards and give someone a good reading from it. So this is definitely one that I cycled through, and I would sit in front of the TV and work through the whole deck and do 26 rapid fire imaginary readings just to get to know the deck, because I only got it at the end of last year. Yeah, another one I could tuck in my bag. I don't think it's as under the radar visually as the Luna Soul, but this is definitely a pocket deck or a keep on the desk, keep on the table deck. Very pleased with that one. Blood Moon, number 9. Gorgeous. I struggled a little. I hadn't done any real study of it. I just threw it in the mix, and I think I need more time with it. There were some cards that really spoke to me when I paired them in spreads with other decks or when I paired them with an oracle. Again, I think pulling one card for me and trying to get a daily draw out of it is not where I'm at with this deck right now. I'm going to probably put it into another 10 deck grouping at some point in the future and spend some more time with it to see how we get along. I really love the art, but for me, I struggled a little reading with it, and that's just on me at this point. It's not going anywhere, keeping it. And the last one on the list is the Threadbound Oracle by Cedar Mcleod. I think I etched it in yellow. This is just a pleasure to work with. I love that there's 3 keywords on it. This is one that I've had for a while and I don't reach for it that much, and I couldn't figure out why. I do have a few decks that I keep mostly for writing practice, and I think if I put that in that collection, which is a small, 5 or 6 decks, I think I will get more use out of it, because what it can function as, using the 3 keywords, is to bring elements into writing that might be missing, or if I feel like something's flat and I pull a card and it might have a suggestion at the end. Maybe it's over. Protection, beauty, wholeness. It's colorful. It's beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to work on finding ways to use this more frequently because I do really enjoy it. So that's it for my 10 decks. I really felt this was fruitful and useful for me. And from now to May 1st, I'm going to be working with, I already defined working with, I'm going to be using one deck and one oracle until May 1st. And then I think maybe when I do my groupings of 10 decks, I'll stretch them, you know, from like Beltane to the next holiday, and I'll do them along the wheel of the year. So great. Thank you for starting the hashtag Sylvan. And I've watched a lot of people's responses, although I haven't commented on all of them. So thanks to everyone who participated and shared their experience. Bye.